Okay, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Um, Welcome everyone. Welcome to this keynote. Hi, Jesse. Hi, Jose. Good evening. So before I get into the talk, hi everyone. I hope you're still, learning from the boot camp and you're still working on on projects. Some have not finished your projects. There's still time till tomorrow you can submit. So yeah, at the end of this session we have today, we'll be sending out two papers on on two advanced RAG techniques, and we expect you guys to discuss in your teams tomorrow by 4 p.m. West African time. More info on that after the session. So um, some people are here now, so let's get into the introduction. More people will join as we start. Hi, Jesse. Are you there?
I'm here.
All right. It's good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Okay, so
thank
yeah.
you.
So Dr. Jose Posada, I hope I got that right, Jose.
You
Yeah.
got it right.
Thank you. He's the lead biomedical informatics data scientist at Stanford Healthcare, and he holds a PhD in biomedical informatics. He has over a decade of experience spanning clinical data science, natural language processing, and healthcare AI. Dr. Osei has led research and product development at institutions such as Stanford University School of Medicine, Abridge, and he's currently focusing on clinical NLP, healthcare analysis, and large-scale biomedical data system. His works bridges, academia, industry, and healthcare, driving innovation at the intersection of AI and medicine. Um, I'll pass the mic over to you. Say, I believe you do a better introduction of yourself. Thank you.
Uh,
It's an honor to
Um,
have you here. Just for context, we have diverse set of people from mostly from over Africa, and we have some people from Asia, India, we have few from Europe, and we have a couple people from the US. So and everybody is at different time zones. So it's 6 p.m. here. I think for those in Ethiopia, it's probably 8 p.m. Some people in the US, I believe for you, say it should be maybe in the morning or afternoon or where, depending on where you're at. So, yeah, we're a very diverse community. The rest of us will be joining in. The other members will be joining in as you go. So, over to you, Jose. Thanks.
Thank you. No, thank you for the introduction um, and I appreciate you are creating this space to share and get connected about these topics that are quite um, not just relevant, but they are better discussed in community. So yeah, this is amazing and great initiative. When Rebecca told me about it, I was really glad to be able to come here. So yeah, you got it right. My name is Jose Posada. I am from Colombia, South America. If you didn't detect it in my accent, that's where my accent is coming from. And I'm really happy to talk to you about this topic that is really um, close to me because I've been working with data um, for the past for most of the past decade. I've been really passionate about how data is the actual enabler of AI. Without data, there is no AI, and we want to know how to get better data because there is one dirty secret: is that we have almost already exhausted the amount of data that is publicly available to train LLMs. And then when you exhausted all the data, what you're going to do? Now, if there are specialized domains where there is not enough public data, how do you make those AI better if there is not enough public data? And that is what we are focusing on here. We are focusing on how do you get great data that is very similar to the data that is locked down on silos, on hospitals, on all these institutions to train AI systems. And the answer to that is generating synthetic data. That is the answer to this particular predicament. And we're going to talk in this talk about how can we generate data that actually looks real, not just prompting an LLM to say, please generate a clinical note or do something, but actually generate medical data that can be useful on real world scenarios, not just for a demo. If there is at any point in this talk that there is a terminology or there is something that is not clear, please let me know. Drop just a question in the chat. You can also feel free to open the mic, raise your hand as well, if you would like, because I want this to be as much as possible a conversation, because when questions are asked, we all get better. The worst question is the question that is not being asked. So every question is great because it's something that will help you clarify, understand your journey through this time. So I'm going to try to get started. I'm also going to do a small break here and there. I'm going to prep some questions. And please let me know, again, everything that I just said. So then when we try to generate real data, the first thing is, what is the trick to actually generate real data? That is the first aspect. And the second is, how do you actually know is any good? So that is going to be the second part of the talk. And the third part of the talk is going to talk about how do we do it. So there is a Jupyter notebook, half-baked, I need to confess. I'm going to show it to you today, and then I can share it later when I clean it up a little bit, but it's ready to go and functional for this talk. And then we're going to talk about the real world pitfalls and how to avoid them. Let's get started. So we need data to build AI, I just said that. And the main premise and the thing that I'm really passionate about in this particular field is that we want to help patients. We want to help people like you and I. When we go to the doctor, when our families go to the doctor, we want to receive the best care possible. And the only way to do that is to enable physicians, healthcare providers to do a better job. I do not believe for any moment or any second that AI is here to replace doctors. AI is here to make doctors better. In many countries, including mine, sometimes the doctor doesn't even have 10 minutes with you. In many places, there is not an overabundance of doctors. So when somebody is with a doctor, we want to have the best experience possible, the best care possible, and the best outcomes possible. So there is a lot of room to grow. Countries like mine and many countries, I'm sure like yours, are in great need of showing the value of these tools as enablers, improvers of the current landscape for healthcare providers. But of course, because we want to use data to train AI systems, the big barrier is that it's not so much a barrier. I put it a barrier because it's sort of the standard word, but we want to preserve our privacy. We don't want just to disclose all our clinical records. There are many things that could go wrong if we do that. There are secure ways to share your medical records. There are indeed public databases with public medical records for different systems. The most famous is the Mimic database. That is a database that contains real electronic health records from intensive care unit patients from a hospital in Boston. So there is a secure way to share that data, but still that only contains 60,000 patients. If we compare that with a database that I'm building in Colombia, with a small, quote unquote, a small hospital in a small city, just in that database, we have 700,000 patients. If you compare that with large databases for American companies, one of them is Epic that just recently launched a database with a large collection of patients that runs in the hundreds and 100 million patients. So there you see that we are just scratching the surface in what we can actually have and we can actually do. And having access to such data is complex because every country has regulations to protect patients. Every country wants to ensure that privacy is met. So it's not data that is easy to access. If you want to go beyond access and then you want to annotate that data, what does it mean to annotate clinical data? It depends on the use case, but to annotate clinical data means that you want to assert certain characteristics of the data that may not be present there already. For example, I want to really assert that this patient has been referred to the clinician before starting taking medications. I participated in a research when we wanted to know for pediatric patients whether that hyperactive disorder, whether these patients were referred to behavioral therapy before they were sent home with medications for hyperactive disorder. And that particular nuance is not easy to know and to get, right? Somebody actually needs to read the clinical note and to assert that. And the cost of doing that can be really high. The numbers here are in dollars. In some other countries, their costs can be really low in dollars, but comparatively can be high in the context of that country. And in not just that, it's a task that is time consuming and requires a lot of human effort, not just in preparation, but in actual collection, training, and deployment of resources to do that. Also, if we consider healthcare data suffer from these rare conditions, is that many things happen, but there is a wide range of diseases where you may be interested that doesn't occur much. And that's good, right? We don't want a lot of diseases to occur. Like we don't want a lot of population to be sick. So because most people doesn't have a particular disease, if you want to study or to get training data for most diseases, you don't really have a lot of labels to train on for the most part. Also, underrepresented populations in data sets is also challenged sometimes. That may or may not be a challenge in your context. Colombia is a quite diverse country, so underrepresentation sometimes is not necessarily an issue, but here in the US, because there are so many pockets, it may be an issue. And yeah, the quote here is because most of the healthcare related data sets that are for NLP are usually with very little data. So what is the traditional way to try to generate synthetic data? It's to do word substitution, just to try to not to change too much the data underneath. And from now on, we are going to focus on just one modality, and it's clinical notes. That's sort of my specialty. There are, of course, ways to generate multimodal data as well, but I'm going to focus for this talk on clinical text. That is my specialty. So word substitution, as you see, that's sort of the traditional approach. It's slightly similar to when you try to inject noises in pixels in images, but it usually falls short. Back translation, there is some rigid transformations, not just word substitution, trying to change the order of things here and there, trying to detect sentences that may be equivalent or just swapping them. So way too many tricks that does not necessarily give you better data. Now LLMs get into the picture. And yeah, you get it and it looks sort of real, but it will hallucinate. It will throw, for example, saying that a male is pregnant, right? So it may hallucinate. Recent LLMs may hallucinate very little with something like this, but uh, also it may suffer from memorization. It may just throw you the same example data that is over the internet. And one thing, it lose of context. So because it doesn't have a lot of medical knowledge embedded into, it may give you just the common stuff. And that is very particular with LLM. So over the internet and the data that is trained, yeah, there are posts and mentions from hospitals and some medical literature that sort of try to enrich the context of what LLM is trained on. But in general, the LLMs, like the diversity you need to reach everything that may happen at a hospital. So it may focus just in the common things. But for example, if this particular drug is being used off-label means that it's not used for a particular indication, but in some cases the doctor uses it because it's the best resource available, then it will maybe miss that, or it may put two drugs that may be indicated for two different diseases, and they within each diseases are right, but you don't see it in a real patient because those two drugs interact and may cause some harm to the patient. And because of that, the doctor will be aware of that and will say, I will not give you this medication, we'll substitute with this because the interaction may be harmful to you. So again, it may look okay, but when you start analyzing the details, it falls short. So what do we have? What resource do we have to overcome this? In medicine, we have spent the past 30 years collecting knowledge, not just in the form of books, but in the form of graphs. So I don't know, how many of you are familiar already with with knowledge graphs? Just raise your hand or like thumbs up if you're there. And if not, I will definitely. Oh, thank you for that question. I will answer that question in a bit. So knowledge graphs are these artifacts that allow us to collect knowledge in a computable manner. For example, let's say I'm describing my arm, right? And in the end of my arm is my hand. So I know that the hand is part of the arm. But in a knowledge graph that is explicitly coded with relationships that says the arm is part of, the hand is part of the arm. And because it's computable and it's structured, you can use it, you can query, you can parse it in a structured way. There are newer languages to parse knowledge graphs, and there are libraries that allows you to do that as well. And some of these graphs are instantiated as databases that you can actually use SQL to parse them as well. And then you can ground that into knowledge. So in medicine, we have developed those knowledge graphs. We sometimes call them ontologies. That is just also a fancy word for a knowledge graph that is more complicated and enriches and is more enriched. And those ontologies are heavily maintained in medicine. So the World Health Organization maintains ontologies. The National Library of Medicine in US maintains a lot of ontologies. There are many organizations that curates and maintains ontologies and knowledge graphs for medicine. because they are actively used in medicine, not just for research, but for one important detail that aligns incentives with the creation of these resources, and is for payments. The way hospital systems around the world are traditionally paid is by submitting uh, bills that contains information from this knowledge graph that allows the people that needs to pay to quickly process these bills and to actually pay the hospital systems. So we ground in that knowledge, and then with that knowledge, we can actually do um, uh, and improve the way the notes are generated. I'm going to pause for 1 minute here because I've been already talking for 20 minutes. So I'm going to pause for 1 minute and we'll continue.
All right. So yeah, there's a question in the Q&A. So he says, what got you interested in combining AI and healthcare in the first place? That's the first question. We have another question.
Yeah, so let me answer that. So that I was on a field that was quote unquote very different than this one. And it is control systems, that is like process automation. And at that moment, at some point in that journey, I felt that I wanted to use my skills in something more impactful. So I got into healthcare because I feel that the work that you do here impact lives, and you can directly impact life quite easily. And the combination of AI in healthcare, I've been doing AI when it was not fancy. So I've been training neural networks since 2006, when it was not that fancy, quote unquote. And I believe the interaction of AI in healthcare was just natural. Most of what is portrayed as AI, even in sci-fi, there is a lot of components that are actually related to medicine. If you have ever watched series like Star Trek or many series, this sense of like AI actually implemented in healthcare is quite prevalent in the stories. So it's easy to bring the gap between what is needed and the drive for reaching change there. So how do we properly handle data privacy when we build systems for healthcare? My concern is on the fact that healthcare policies may change over time, and in some cases, the system built may need to also adapt to changes. How could this be done effectively? That's a great question. So the answer is twofold. One is recognizing that any product that you build is in constant change. Writing code, factoring and refactoring. In the past, the cycles were in years. Now the cycles are in months or weeks. Softwares in the 90s didn't have maybe like yearly updates. Now you get a push in your phone for updates like every day sometimes. So the cycle of software development is really fast. And with AI, I'm just expecting that to be even faster. So the adaptation to particular policies is just now part of this regular software development cycle. But the second part is that in most countries, policies are actually quite slow. Most countries does not adopt policies overnight. Most countries develop policies that takes years, the process, at least 1 year. And even so, they tend not to be that dramatic on the changes. Like that's what traditionally happens in most Congress in the world, right? So you usually have time to adapt to the policies and to the landscapes, and have like, again, considering the current software development cycle, you usually have time to adapt and to respond to such demands. Okay,
All right.
so let's let's continue.
All right. Thank you, Jose. So, guys, drop your question for those that joined in late. If you have a question, drop it in the QA chat. Jose would love to answer them.
Okay, so thank you very much. Next. So, so then we are going to revise this paper. I refer that as our, just because it's referring to the paper, but the authors of this paper are proposing this new methodology that have a three-stage pipeline. The first part of the pipeline talks about extracting the knowledge, right? Extracting knowledge, and I already refer about knowledge graphs in the beginning. And then the second component is try to have some templates or patterns of how data is actually generated. How would you know those patterns? You always need a subject matter expert. That is the other thing that is, I cannot stress enough. If you don't have the expertise in the particular field to do something, try to get a contact, try to get a relationship with someone that actually have knowledge of the field. A lot of people will give you, will be willing to be part of what you are building, what you want, or what you want to build, or sometimes just give you advice. That's the relationships are vital to do or advance to any particular field where you may not be an expert on. And the third part, that is identify key clinical relationships, talks about, for example, I want a drug that is actually indicated for this particular disease, right? It's talking about, and that is the kind of knowledge you actually get from this knowledge medicine knowledge graph. UMLS and SNOMED CT are knowledge graphs, are ontologies that are well known in this domain. Then with the second step is that you inject that knowledge into the prompt in a particular way, right? You are asking the prompt to do, generate, you're going to see, generate a clinical note that contains this disease, and please try to include these medications as part of the prompt, and inform about writing styles. For example, in medicine, a clinical note that is written in an emergency department is not the same as a clinical note that is written in an intensive care unit. It's not the same note that a doctor writes when he's a primary care physician, that is your regular doctor, and you go for your everyday things. So those are writing styles that can be very different. And where radiologist writes a note for an image that is reading. And then with such constraints, you actually go into the generation and try to preserve the factual accuracy. And we're going to see how to even check what is going on. So these are just some knowledge graphs that are very common, and that will give you a lot of information about that. ICD-10, again, is maintained by the World Health Organization and is heavily used across the globe, because most countries, when they report, they sort of report to the World Health Organization the prevalence of diseases, and that is how they keep track of that globally. The other aspect is to try to get these disease progression timelines, right? So something just not appear out of the thin air. Comorbidity networks, people, for example, that is diabetic, tends to be overweight. And standard care pathways, again, this is included in the procedures and the medications that people traditionally take for particular disease. I already talked about the distinction between emergency and discharge summaries is a kind of clinical report that is written when a patient leaves a hospital. So this is just like a mock example of what you traditionally will get. So let's say I'm going to write a clinical note for a patient with atrial fibrillation. That's just the technical term for a heart attack, and heart failure is very similar. And then I ask this database, please give me a medication. So you give me warfarin, that is like medication that is used to, it's a blood thinner, metoprolol, furosemide, medications that are used, that are typically used if you have some of those conditions. And then I want to prevent the note also to talk about medications that are um, that shouldn't be mentioned together. For example, it's telling me that I shouldn't use the word amiodarone because it's an interaction that is not necessarily good. So you have some knowledge and you get it quote unquote for free because this knowledge base has been curated. And you can imagine that you can apply this to many other fields, right? Then you try to build a prompt saying, please generate, for example, this chart summary that will be a particular set of note. I want to generate with these particular conditions. I want to generate with the secondary conditions that are usually talk about comorbidities. These are the type of medications because I got those medications from the knowledge base. These are the critical interactions that you need to monitor on, and some other comment that you would like to do. Then when they implemented this scale, you see that it significantly improved tasks associated with the biomedical domain. So disease classifications are usually tasks when you're tasked to classify a disease given a clinical note. Medication extraction are tasks where given a clinical note, I want to extract all the relevant medications from a note. A clinical NER usually are pipelines that try to extract whether disease is mentioned, whether a medication is mentioned, whether a procedure is mentioned, whether a lab is mentioned. So it's named entity recognition, and those are the sort of entities you're trying to target. And relation extraction are pipelines that are trying to extract the relationship between two events within a clinical note. And as this paper show, it's actually showing performance gain across. These are 4 tasks, but there are 4 other tasks mentioned in the paper. Because they generate this training data, they saw that compared with the baseline training data, they got more medical concepts. This is more procedures, more medication, more diseases. They tried to measure the syntactic variety, and it looks like was better. More context richness, because they were injecting all that context for affect clinical notes, or sorry, for the knowledge bases. But we get into the second part, that is, how do we make sure that this actually is actually valid? And then we need a framework for that. And there is a paper, very recent paper, those 2 papers are very recent, that give us a framework of how to evaluate this. There are things that, of course, for example, a mammogram is showing 3 nipples. There may be people actually that may have that because, you know, a genetic abnormality, but in general, you shouldn't have that happen. So the current metrics are actually not, the automatic metrics are actually not focused on catching plausibility. They are just trying to catch statistically on surface properties that is not actually catching whether this is real or not. So in this paper, 7 C's framework is proposed. So this actually, it's you can evaluate whether this is real or fake. Now, this also imposes a challenge, right? Because you want to generate thousands of data samples, and then what are you going to do? Are you going to review every single one of them? Maybe yes, maybe not. Reviewing samples that are synthetic has a great advantage. And what is that? Is that you can generate it, quote unquote, without engaging in these very complicated legal agreements with hospitals, even if you get it. But on the other side, if you want to properly vet all the samples, you may also incur in some of the costs to verify. But to verify samples is usually easier than, again, get the samples in the first place or trying to generate de novo labels for clinical data. And there are many, many ways to make this easier. Also, there are statistical properties that you can do, like random sampling and all that, to try to see if on average you're also doing a good job. So the first C is congruence. And it's, for example, there are statistical properties that are matching. The perceptual quality is maintained, like somebody's reading this and the perceptual quality is maintained. And when we say statistical properties, is that if you're generating data, maybe the prevalence of a particular disease is 10%, you may want to ensure that the prevalence of that particular disease in your fake data is also 10%. So we already talked about this. Then coverage. So you don't only want your database to contain the most prevalent diseases. For example, diabetic patients, overweight patients, or let's say the prevalent disease in your country. You want to capture a wide variety of data. So also you want to capture demographic diversity. You don't only want to get like sick, ill, old people. For example, the mimic database is one of the big issues, right? Because it's an intensive care uh, database. You mostly get older and sicker persons because those are the people that actually go to an ICU. You also want to get edge cases. Edge cases are very rich and usually are the ones when the models tend to fail. So you want a good coverage of data. Also, constraints. You want the right organs mentioned. For example, you don't want a lab value, a cholesterol value to be 20,000, right? When the maximum range, I believe, is 100. You want a realistic disease progression, like how these usually present, and you want valid drug combinations, and we might talk about this before. You want completeness. That means is that you want to fill all what is expected. For example, in clinical notes, there is a very common format that is a sub format, that's subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. And you may want to include all those elements when you are in general capturing information from a clinical note for an outpatient setting. For a radiology note, usually there is a section that is called impression, the description of the anatomic part they are seeing. You want to capture that, so you want that information to be there. And you want the clinical context that is usually part of the information. Compliance. Of course, because you are generating the novel synthetic data, you just want to be sure that you are not feeding that, let's say, with real data and it's leaking some real data. So there are some bias and fairness metrics that are also important in the sense that this have to do with coverage as well. And it's like they go hand to hand. So you have a good representation of what you're seeing, and you're not, let's say, portraying any outrageous things on the node as well. So comprehension. Can the user understand how data was generated? If you use a framework like the one that I just described, that framework gives you a good sense and a lot of guardrails and limitations on what are the parameters when you're actually are trying to guide the generation of that synthetic data. When you are zero-shot prompting, just like generate a clinical node, generate an X-ray exam, generate this image, you are not constraining enough, so you may not understand how the process is being done. LLMs are enough black box that we don't want to, do this for data that we really want to be able to impact real life by the building of AI that is safe, that is responsible, and that actually is useful. And then consistency, right? We don't want a node with like two different nodes or two different data points to be that should be similar to be that different. So we want this quality to be not just representative, but maintained across the different groups. I don't want to generate great data for elderly people and generate really poor data for pediatric patients, if that is the wide range of data I want to generate. Then we're going to see a short sample of how this may look like with a framework that is called, I don't know if you have seen this, so Distillable is a framework that is created by a company that is called Argila, that was recently acquired by Hugging Face. This company creates, has an annotator tool, and now has this framework that is called Distillable that is precisely targeted to generate
sir.
synthetic data. Yeah.
Yeah, you stopped sharing your screen. We can't see your screen.
Yeah. I'm going
All
to
right.
share another screen.
Okay.
So let's share another screen. So I'm talking for another 20 minutes. This time I'm going to pause and come back in 1 minute. I'm just going to sip some water.
All right. All right. So we have, oh, let me on my camera. So guys, we have size here. Let me mix. Let me see if I can mix posts. Okay. So size here. Hi, Sai.
Hey, yep, sorry, there was a big traffic jam and I had like another meeting and stuff. Yeah.
All right. So we've been with Dr. Jose, and so far we've been learning a couple things about AI and healthcare and synthetic data. So yeah.
Okay, I was just taking some water. Happy to see you here, Sai.
I'm sorry,
Prabhakar.
Jose.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
in
It's okay. Don't
New
worry.
York. It's got walked. Awesome. Happy to like. I think we are seeing each other after a long time. We never had a video call. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, right. We have only talked with over the phone.
yeah. You look great.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, okay. I hope the letters are not too small. I will share this notebook when I clean it a little bit, but for now, let me go through it. Of course, I'm going to go a little bit fast because the intent is just to show you some of the big picture framework, and then you can peruse at your own time, like in trying to understand what is going on here. So there are three things that are happening happening here. The first thing is that we are going to use the DC label library to generate data. It's just a framework that allows a structured way to generate data. I'm going to use a local LLM that is quantized that can run decent on my computer. And you will see that even that is not the latest and greatest, is actually pretty decent. So don't fall for the trap that you always need to use the latest and greatest model to actually do something nice and good. And the third part is that we're also going to review to check some of that data. So let's get started. Okay, the library is Distillable. That is the most important. And the second library, the one that we're going to use to see data, is Argila. The rest is the standard Llama CCP. That is the one that allows us to run local LLM models with restricted hardware. In my case, the hardware that I have. Okay, here I'm just importing the libraries, right? No, nothing fancy here. And then I'm going to use this Llama model that it's quantized. Is Llama 2, not even Llama 3, is 7 billion, is the chat version. Is quote unquote all really good, runs quite fast, so that's okay. I'm running on an M4, so I'm blessed that I have this hardware, but I choose it because I think this will run in a lot of medium-sized computers that are not Mac or anything. So, okay, all good. So then here in this part, I'm faking the data that I will get from knowledge bases. So the task that I'm going to try to generate data for here is the task of de-identification. That is a task that I'm quite familiar with because I'm actually even now currently building the second generation of de-identification for Stanford for clinical text and bringing that into the agentic world. So the task here is that I want to generate clinical notes that I can use to train a system that detects protected health information. That's the task here. But I still want the clinical notes to be credible, right? That's the task. So then I'm faking here the knowledge base. So I'm saying there is a list of diseases, there is a list of medications, a list of procedures, and a list of symptoms, right? So I'm faking that. And these are the writing styles. This is sort of the type of notes that you could get: emergency department note, primary care office visits, nurse assessments, radiology report, all sort of that. So I'm faking that. I'm faking the knowledge bases, but this is something that you will need to give from some knowledge, and this is pertaining to the task that I want to get. Then we're just going to use a class just to define the prompts. Why to use a class in this case? I'm going to use a well-known library in Python that is called Faker to generate fake entities, right? So that library is the one that is going to, why using that instead of using LLMs to do the same thing? I am a true believer that if it's really easy and this is really consistent to generate this type of data, I prefer using a library like this, because this is just like, short snippets that I'm 100% sure are going to be a date. I'm 100% sure that this really looks like a phone number because it's quite deterministic, also with names. And then I will let the LLM to actually write the narrative around what I want. And then this is just going to be a way to sample, right? So I have that knowledge base, and I'm just going to random sample between that. This is just, again, to emulate what it will do with a knowledge base when I actually say, give me a disease. Now give me the medications that are relevant. So here I'm just faking the process. And then this is the actual prompt. So I'm saying, I want to generate a clinical note that is realistic within this writing style with this clinical knowledge, again, requiring from the sample. These are the entities that I'm generating with the Faker library. And these are the instructions, like don't go overboard. I put it really short so it doesn't blow the context window. But a clinical note usually is around like 2,000 characters, 300 words. So doctor doesn't have a lot of time, so all good. Then this is just a sample of how it looks like a prompt, right? With a sample prompt, we move on. Of course, I pre-compute these runs, but I pre-compute all these, so we don't lose any time on this. Then now I use the distillable library. So this library allows me to put the prompt, allows me to specify I specify this class for the number of samples. And then it always also allow me, and this is sort of the interesting part, allows me to integrate with the LLM to consistently generate the data. This is just a mock of the generation. And this is a small test that allows me to check that everything is working as expected. Now, here it comes to actually generate the clinical text. And then there is a pipeline, again, that I can generate with this label. Again, that's sort of the added component of that. Is not just prompting and iterating. This label allows you to have a more structured pipeline to do this work. And then I'm just retrieving the data here again, retrieving the data, appending, I'm collecting all the data. At the end, this is what I will have. I will put the date of today, of course, and then I will go one by one, just to check that everything was actually generated correct. I still got some errors. I got at the beginning of the talk that I need to review some things, so I need to fix this, and I will share it with you guys. But I was sure that I was able to generate some samples, so I could share it with you. So Argila, it's an interface that allows you to annotate and also review data. There is a Docker. Docker is this technology that allows you to spin up entire softwares with quote unquote minimal installation. And I was able to spin up this Docker instance to the notation guide, to the notation interface. Then you use a client from this library that is called Argila, that is the library from this annotation interface, and you push data there. You push data there so you can actually review it, because the process of generating data, again, you always need to review it. This particular annotation tool allows you to programmatically generate the project, to programmatically generate the fields, to programmatically push data. All this is running locally, and I was able to push all the data to generate the data set first, and then to push the data to that data set on that entity. So this is not that complicated. The secret sauce is here. Every record has some fields. That's with the data you want. And this is what I want so the extra data to show. That's it. It's not that complicated once you collect. Then how this looks like. So let me show you how this looks like. Let me stop sharing the screen and let me show you how this looks like. So this is the data I generated. Again, this is Llama 7B, and it's quite good, like quite nice. So here I'm listing sort of the expected entities because just to use the same interface. This interface allowed me to configure a project where I sort of do ratings and can also write comments. And as you see, all the PHI in this particular template looks quite credible. Again, was generated with Faker, and then the LLM is generating the rest of the machinery. So this actually looks real. And you see, this is a emergency department note. It's quite short. This is something that looks like a soap note. It's mostly maybe like an outpatient visit. Another emergency department note, another emergency department note, and then this looks more like an outpatient note. And then with an interface like this, you will rate it, good, excellent, you will write comments. Then what you do next, you will download this again programmatically, and then you have your training data for your model, that in this case is model that you would like to do to train a system that recognize protected health information from clinical notes. And that will finalize my talk today. I will reply the comments. Okay, no, there are no more questions. Let me check.
Yeah, there are questions in Q&A.
Yeah, I saw it. If you could redesign the way healthcare systems use AI from scratch, what would you change first? That's a great question. I wouldn't be shy.
Jose, I'll point it out. US healthcare system is very different. Maybe answer this in two ways. US healthcare system, healthcare in general.
Yeah. Thank you. I actually, because I'm quite connected to the healthcare in Colombia as well, I was trying to step back because there are many similarities, and this is an issue with all healthcare systems in the world. So healthcare is something that is, in general, expensive to run. Like you don't get away with that. Like in general, every country in the world, healthcare running is expensive. You need infrastructure. This is a manpower operation. You need a lot of people to run anything. And the machines are expensive, not just because they want to make it expensive, it's just because the machines intrinsically are, they require a set of components that need more testing than your traditional phone that can break and nothing happens, right? So reliable electronics are expensive. There is no way around it. It's not because the company want to do them. Reliable manufacturing is expensive. When you want to reduce, like just making a syringe that is like meets standard just to draw blood is more expensive than just producing a piece of metal. Like it just so running healthcare is expensive. Population are aging. That makes it even more expensive because it's just a fact of life that the older you are, the sicker you are. That's just a fact of life. So I wouldn't be shy of recognizing that healthcare, independent of your political views or your internal desires, needs to have a proper financial incentive alliance. And you need to align with incentive and recognize them. Like, this is not an issue of single payer or like, it's not an issue of is enough money. Like there are financial incentive and you need to focus on how to align financial incentive. Yes, you want better outcomes, but you need to recognize that you will, for most part, be resource constrained, even with all the AI, because you always need people. So that's the part of the redesign is that everybody needs to be front and center saying that I need to align myself with financial incentive because if not, this doesn't work. So that is a reality. That doesn't mean everybody needs to make money. That's a different thing, but you need to align with that. Okay, so while creating data sets for training, yeah, relative. Do you have like a step for generating synthetic data for LLM? Could you walk through a quick high-level process to automate cleaning, formatting workflows for existing databases? Automation methods for generating cleaning and formatting clinical data for. Okay, I think I sort of covered that. If the cleaning and formatting, I think I sort of covered that. Automation methods for generating clean and formatting. Yeah, I think I sort of covered that. The only part that I didn't cover is how to properly run a verification / annotation workflow. That in itself is a whole talk. So, but the TLDR is that you need to train people and you need to train people to do it right. And the people that are reviewing the data, again, needs to have an incentive to do it properly. I think that is the most important component of that. Speed and cost, again, is second. Just be aware that proper training and proper incentive for the people that are reviewing is paramount. If you could leave us with one challenge to think about as we build with AI, what would it be? Of course, related with healthcare also. Yeah, the challenge that I will tell you is to think on your healthcare interactions, on your own life, and your healthcare interactions, and ask yourself what I want to be better for me. If you're young, maybe you don't even go to the doctor, so your parents or your grandpas. So what would be better for me? Because if you make a question personal, like the challenge is try to ask for a question that is personal. So it matters to you. It starts from there. And then you will realize that something that matters to you will matter as well for a lot of people as well. But it starts from there. And then you might think, oh, that's too difficult to solve. But at least you start thinking, let's, and then if that, let's say, oh, that's too difficult to solve, I don't know how to do, go to the second thing that matters to you, right? But just start from the first one and walk from there downwards, because there are always some things that you see. And if at this moment it doesn't occur to you, the challenge is the next time you have an interaction with a healthcare provider, just try to pay attention. Try to pay attention to them, not just in what you need, but try to pay attention to them and what is happening around you, right? The context awareness will give you a lot of hints on what to focus on what are the things that are interesting. And I'm late for my other meeting, but I really enjoyed this space. Thank you for all these questions. I will need to step out. Thank you, Zai, for this invitation. I wish you the best, guys, and I will commit myself to try to have a Jupyter notebook with no box. But was enough to show you guys the thing, so I will share it so it runs for you with no box. And see you in a different opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Jose. I'll watch the talk and the recording. So yeah, this is a topic I'm working on as well. So we'll talk more.
Oh, amazing. Oh, sure. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right. Hi everyone, good evening. Hi Sai. Good evening.
Hey,
Yeah. So
awesome.
yeah, thanks guys for the talk. We'll upload it to our YouTube. And I want to apologize. Last recording, I've been working on editing the show. So I would upload it as well. And then you guys will get an email. Like I said at the start of the talk, we'll be covering two topics next week on Monday and Tuesday on advanced RAG techniques. But before that, we took this feedback from one of you that said it would be nice if we could share some papers, relevant papers to the bootcamp that you guys can use to learn and discuss in teams. So we'll be sending so you check out for your emails. We'll be sending an email that has links to two RAG papers, two advanced RAG techniques. And we want you guys to meet. All teams should meet tomorrow by 4 p.m. We'll also broadcast this on WhatsApp and on Discord. Meet by 4 p.m. West African time. So you figure out what time it is in your time zone tomorrow, and get to discuss with it for 1 hour if it's possible. If you guys are are feeling geeky enough, try and see if you can implement it in the projects you've submitted. And yeah, on Monday and Tuesday we'll get into doing it. So also, side note, we're coming to the end of the boot camp. It's been a very long ride. A very big thank you to Sai. We got Dr. Jose through Sai's is his Sai's friend. Thanks to Ifeanyi and everybody that has helped us and supported us throughout this boot camp. So next week we'll be starting our capstone project, and that capstone project will also serve as the hackathon. So yeah, more info on that next week. And yeah, I hope you all have a great night. So see you guys. Sai, do you want to say anything?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
awesome. I saw a lot of people share their project on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's amazing. You guys are so committed. And this is what is motivating us as well to do this, as well as I'm pretty sure, like, as you post it on LinkedIn and Twitter, like, more people are gonna see. It's gonna help you. Also, also prove to your would-be employers in the future that you know the stuff you're talking about, right? So that is always helpful. Like, and also I'll encourage you guys to clean up your code. For this boot camp, you guys, like, we'll be writing codes in a rush. It'll be in bad format, like whatever. Like, just finish it. After that, take your time, clean up the code, write like proper data formats if you guys are like software engineers, uh, and put it in GitHub, and then you add that GitHub link to your resume so people can look at your good quality code and good quality ML projects, and then uh, they'll be super impressed. Not a lot of people have GitHub links on their resume. It'll help you guys out.
All right. So thank you guys. I also wanted to commend a good number. I noticed a good number of people. I checked the GitHub links, and there was good documentation from like almost everyone. So keep it up, guys. And so we'll see you guys tomorrow. Please don't forget team meetings tomorrow, 4 p.m. West African time. We'll send you more info on that this night. All right, cheers.